Welcome everybody to the full council meeting today.
Good evening, everyone. I was privileged a couple of weeks ago to lead the ceremony marking the mayor's election to be mayor, his civic service, and a few of you weren't able to make that, and so I thought that what I would do tonight, reflecting the mayor's desire to, as he said at that meeting, to visit every church, every gurdwara, every mosque, every place of worship, I thought that I would share with you tonight the prayer that I composed for that evening, and hope that the majority of us, if not all of us, can say, let it be, Amen, as I come to an end of the prayer. From ancient times down to the present, there is found among all peoples a certain perception of that hidden power which hovers over the course of things and over the events of human history. At times some indeed have come to the recognition of a supreme being, even father or perhaps a mother. This perception and recognition penetrates our lives with a profound religious sense. There are two things shared by people of faith. The first is arguably summed up by the phrase, do unto others as you will be done to. The second thing that people of faith share in common is the certainty that God's love for all people holds across time, culture, tradition, race and creed, and that there is no one outside of God's love. We believe that it is God's love which connects us to everyone around us. Everyone is created by the same loving God, and all of us are oriented towards that God as our ultimate destination. God is present to all of us, and we run into his goodness and saving grace every day, whether or not we're even aware of God. And therefore we're bold to bring our prayer before Almighty God, who is the creator of all things. Our prayer tonight would be that you draw us together in all our diversity, in a union of tolerance and conciliation. We pray for all people of different races, languages, cultures and customs, that we might learn to bear one another's burdens, working together in love as brothers and sisters. We pray that we may carry out your plans and designs for your creation. Forgive us our sins and failures, we pray. Keep us from only of ourselves and from harm. Give us power to use your good gifts of order and freedom to your glory and the good of all people, that we will truly learn to love and serve each other. These things we pray, that we might be able to say to you, Amen.
Further apologies from the floor. Can I ask, are there any declarations of interest? Deb, have you received any?
None received, Mr. Speaker.
None received. Are there any from the floor?
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Anyone else? Rob Slum. Thank you, Councillor Stone. Councillor. All three of the same declaration. Right. Item 4 on the agenda, the minutes of the council. Appendix A, your white paper, page 6, to confirm the minutes of the annual meeting of the council held on the 24th of May. Someone so confirm? Richard Overton and the leader. All those in favour? Who were there? Thank you. Item 5. Call upon the leader to give his report and any announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and welcome members. Our Telford 50 celebrations are now in full swing, with tens of thousands of people across the borough continuing to get involved in the celebrations to leave a lasting legacy in this, our 50th year. Following on the success of our St George's Day event, our Kite and Bloom Festival, this month's Telford's Carnival was the biggest and best to date, attracting more than 20,000 people. So a great family event for all of the family to our award-winning Telford Town Park. The level of community involvement and diversity of those taking part in something of which I think we can all be proud. In total, these 3 events have attracted around 62,000 people, a superb figure. And we hope that we will see more great crowds as a range of top names come to town as part of the Big Top in Telford Town Park next month. I look forward to seeing you at some of the events there. These events are setting a new benchmark for our borough and attracting people to Telford from far and wide, as well as our own residents having a fantastic time in their town. The feedback has been fantastic, and just to quote a couple of people from social media, Wendy, who's from Wolverhampton, said that she came to the area to celebrate the carnival and it was outstanding. Rachel said that she had a fab family day with lots of things for the children to do and a fantastic family friendly environment. Well done, Telford. Ollie says it's a cracking effort from Telford Wrekin Council, and Will says he's proud to live in Telford in this 50th year. In addition to these big events right across the borough, each week there's many more community events to celebrate the 50th anniversary. And they are as important as the big ones in the centre. From Telford's 50th street party in Donington to Telford's 50th mile trail, and dozens of smaller events organised by the community are involving thousands more celebrating what Telford 50 means to them. This anniversary has brought our communities even closer together as people reflect on what makes this such a great place. And I look forward to really harnessing that spirit in the coming years as grant reductions mean we need to do less as a council and empower and equip our communities even further. Telford at 50 is laying some very strong foundations in our community on which we must build. Over the last 2 months, our plans to have another lasting legacy of the 50th anniversary this year has gathered pace with a huge range of projects supported by our £2 million Telford at 50 Legacy Fund. In supporting town councils and a huge range of community groups with almost £1 million to invest into community buildings and locations, which will generate hundreds of thousands of pounds in match funding. Elsewhere, the Legacy Fund touches so many aspects of life from the borough, from improving the courts area in Telford Town Park with our famous Thomas Telford statue to its original glory, to installing permanent lighting at the Iron Bridge, to £100,000 to support a range of new measures to tackle homelessness in our borough. Our Legacy Fund is also funding a smart house to showcase how people can access a range of gadgets and new technologies to help people needing to care for their family and stay at home. The success of Telford at 50 celebrations has happened because we've all been involved, the public at every stage, and it's brilliant to see this will now be recognised as part of our Telford Community Pride Awards, which we have open for nominations. Mr. Speaker, it's put a lie to those people who said that Telford at 50 was just one big party. It is a fitting, also in our 50th year, we continue to deliver major new projects such as the Telford Footbridge, the first phase of which was hoisted in position using one of the biggest cranes in Europe last month. And I thank all the residents for bearing with us in regards to the inconvenience there. Businesses are also booming here in Telford Wrekin as we punch above our weight on the regional and national stage. Our land deal is achieving jobs, over 1,000 new jobs created, over £25 million of land sales, and a fantastic legacy in Newport as we plan to open our innovation park, a Labour council delivering for Newport. Separately, the council's rented housing company, New Place, going from strength to strength. In its first 3 years, it has built 236 homes, all on brownfield sites, and delivered a gross profit of £1.5 million and generating £750,000 a year in additional council tax and new homes bonus. But one of its biggest achievements might be is the U-turn by the Conservatives, who now cautiously welcome New Place after years of promising to sell it off. Equally, we are working with landlords across the borough to raise the standards of rented accommodation with our Road Landlord Task Force, which is cracking down on the whole range of poor quality rented homes and helping our landlords in our town increase their standards. Who could be against better homes for all? Well, the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. We continue to also boost the health of our high streets in our borough towns, and last month we saw the finals of the Young High Street Challenge initiative, involving thousands of young people. Thank you to all those young people involved who have also come up with the ideas and some fabulous initiatives to revitalise our high streets. Who could oppose the pride in the high street, Mr. Speaker? Well, we know who. The last few weeks have seen important progress towards the independent council inquiry into child sexual exploitation, with a process to appoint an independent commissioner now well underway, and we can expect a commissioning body to be in place in the autumn. The double independence process we are all following will, we believe, be the best place to give victims and survivors the answers they rightly demand. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I do hope that later on today we can unite once more in our stand against the planned closure of our consultant-led Women's and Children's Unit and our A&E. Thank you very much.
Item 6, can I invite our Mayor to address the meeting on duties he has partaken in and completed, and any future ones he wishes to draw to our attention.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just want to say, starting my term, I've enjoyed visiting some of the schools in the borough and enjoying speaking to the children who are our next generation. I've enjoyed going to quite a lot of, as the leaders mentioned, the celebrations that have been held in the borough. I've enjoyed taking part in them and seeing the smiles on the residents' faces. I've enjoyed certain communities getting together, and it helps towards my theme of building bridges. I've had a few communities speak to me, and there's a few meetings lined up to build more bridges in the community. Thank you to the councillors who have helped me on the way, and I've got my charity launch tomorrow at Dawley Town Hall. You're more than welcome to come if you haven't bought a ticket. It starts at 6:30, and I'll keep you updated in the next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You're lucky. There's no questions been received on your work that you've done during since the last council meeting. Can I therefore ask the leader and cabinet members whether they have any comments on any matter covered in their cabinet report, our Appendix C? No comments are made. However, questions can be asked. Andrew?
Would like to give me a hand over with the mic, or never mind. Yeah, I would like to ask Peter. You came to my rescue. Do you know, I knew it would happen one day. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask a couple of questions on the Green Guarantee, if I could. Now, I note that it's very much like shutting the door after the horse has bolted, of course, having built on all our greenfield sites because you didn't have a plan in place and causing a great amount of grief. And I want to know, actually, what else was considered while you were putting the Green Guarantee sites together. What other parcels of land did you consider but decide not to include in the Green Guarantee? In other words, what was actually left out? And also, how many of the green guarantee spaces are actually already protected, such as play areas and such like that, or it's impossible to build on anyway? So I would like to know. I also rather curious of the delay when you went out to the favourite sites, etc. Why there was a huge delay, and I understand it was due to you didn't have a very good response and you needed some more numbers in. So if that could be confirmed, I would rather like that. But what concerns me most of all, of course, is what is the Great Green Guarantee worth? Now, the cabinet member responsible did say at cabinet, I think it was the cabinet before last, while I was enjoying a holiday in Hampshire at the time, funnily enough, that actually it doesn't, and I quote, it doesn't protect spaces necessarily from being developed. So what is the worth of the Green Guarantee?
Thank you, Andrew.
Yes.
First and foremost, the Green Guarantee, when I chaired 40 members of the West Midlands environmental officers, is they couldn't get enough of the Green Guarantee. They thought it was wonderful. And authorities like Coventry, Stoke, Nottingham, etc., all wanted all of the details with regards to the Green Guarantee. The Green Guarantee will mean that public areas, green spaces, will be protected from planning. That is a condition. And the other thing that I'm sad you were actually absent. You could have learnt a little bit more that would have answered the questions that you refer to. And the other point is that not all green spaces, not all areas of planning criteria actually come under or are owned by Telford Wrekin Council. So we have no control in anyone who wishes to put in a planning application. Under the regulations, Andrew, I don't know whether you know or not, but I could put an application in for a dwelling in your garden. You know, it is that point that I would, yes. Where do you live, Andrew? Do you actually live in Churchester? No. No.
Gone up in the world.
Excuse me. I live in St George's. Yeah. So basically, I know. You're welcome to the barbecue, Andrew. And the other point is that no one will be further than, I believe it's around 850 yards away from a green space under the Green Guarantee. The Green Guarantee will also be developed into what the people who voted for the Green Guarantee and the local people want. If you want to put the bench or whatever, you know, to go and wind down from the pressures of Telford Wrekin Council, you can do. You know, so actually, the Green Guarantee, I'm extremely proud to have been a cabinet member that I hope when I do demise, that someone will probably say, well, John Moynihan was the actual chap that put all these play areas in for these people. And if there's anything else, Andrew, I'll be glad to reply in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Minor. Any other questions? Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've got two questions from two different cabinet members I'd like to ask. Part question, part statement, forgive me. Excuse me. Item 243, civil parking enforcement. I'm sure you'd expect, or people would expect me to say something, because yes, I'm very, very pleased, as we are on this side, that this is now being taken forward by this authority. But who kicked this off? Excuse me, quiet.
I'll tell them when to be quiet, not you.
Well, tell them then. Tell them.
That includes you as well, Steve.
Am I speaking the truth or am I not? I raised a question at council, seconded by my colleague Nicola Lowry, about asking this council to take forward this policy. It was then deferred to scrutiny, and I spoke at 2 scrutinies, as did my colleague, and it was still not decided for some 12 months later. So what I would like to recognise, or people over there to recognise, that yes, we are finally getting, so we actually putting this forward. It might take some time, but we are in the process. But to recognise how this process actually started, and it was this side that made that process kick off. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
That might work.
Councillor Alderton?
Yeah, well, all I'd like to say is that according to the world of Eric, the financial implications of this authority, if we'd have gone ahead on his watch and his motion, would have cost us a lot of money. Thanks to John Campion, the Police and Crime Commissioner, and thanks to the leader of this council, we got a deal that makes this a sound investment for this authority and something that people want.
No. Steve?
It's in relation to what Eric has just said, because I was on the Scrutiny Commission that were looking into the review as to whether or not it was feasible for this authority to take on CPE, and we never completed that review. In fact, the decision was made without our knowledge.
Does that mean you were in support of it or not, cross-party support? Because you're just saying you don't know what you're doing. But the thing with you... Oh, you're against it, are you?
Thank you. Thank you, your 2 members. Eric, you got another question?
Yes. I was going to say something, but she'd stopped me on because it was myself who suggested that Campion upped the budget and gave us more money, but okay. And that's a fact. It's in the minutes. It's in the minutes. Okay, the second point is the Telford land deal. And I think you'd expect me to say something on this. I welcome the Telford land deal, and particularly what has led to the Innovation Park in Newport. But let's put a couple of points straight. And I've got all the facts and figures here. If members don't agree, they're all here. Emails from 2010, July 2010 to October 2010, when I raised with the then... Excuse me, I didn't interrupt you. I didn't. You can interrupt me later if you see me later, if you like.
Listen, will you just carry on with what you're saying?
Okay, sorry, Speaker.
And please...
I said it nice and gently.
Don't bait him.
What I would say is, there's an email here I have dated 15th of July 2010 to Grant Shapps, who was then the Minister in charge, asking him would he consider suggesting to the then Director of the HCA that we met and handed over the land in their ownership to Telford and Wrekin Council. In October that year, that was signed. Since then, obviously, it's taken some time to come to fruition, but my point is, without that initial approach and without that meeting, you wouldn't be able to say what you're doing with the land deal. I welcome it, but let's have some recognition. And also, the NIP is very, very welcome. And also, I've been very, very pleased as the chair of the Regeneration Partnership to work with the university and the council to bring this to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Speaker, thank you. I'm assuming there was a question there somewhere, but I'll take the liberty of answering. I mean, if the council had been around in the 1770s, I'm sure Abraham Darby's position would have been under threat as a person who built the Iron Bridge, to be quite frank with you. And the other thing on your point about the land deal, you claimed 2010 you were still in power for 12 months after that, yet still did not sign a land deal and start to unlock that land for employment or housing to benefit this borough. The other thing is, this is a Labour land deal that was signed in 2016 after Labour negotiations with the relevant authorities in London. It is also, more importantly, underpinned by the Labour growth deal and the Labour Pride funding package, all of which you've been against and have criticised at every single step.
Interesting. No further questions? Thank you. Steve, just either go back to sleep or shut up. Can I call on Councillor Lee Carter to present the recommendations from the Cabinet held on the 19th of April?
I'd like to move the recommendations, please, Speaker.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Andrew?
Yes, I'd like to comment on tackling child sexual exploitation, well, supposedly together, if I can. We are in support of funding the inquiry, and of course we would be after pushing so hard to get the Council to accept that we did need an independent inquiry, and we're very gratified that at least that part of it did get underway. I would like to comment on a couple of other things if I can, Speaker. I understand that drop-in sessions have been arranged for victims and survivors of sexual abuse and exploitation. Now, I do wonder about the independence of such an arrangement by the Council, and also who actually authorised its initiative. I also question as to why members, my group, involved on the advisory panel were not informed in advance that this arrangement was to take place. I also understand that a serious data breach may have occurred as a result of this Council's action, which, if true, may have compromised the safety of one of our families who have possibly been victims of abuse. I have no doubt that the leader of the Council will have been informed of this possible occurrence and the potential refusal by the Council of a crisis loan to help with relocation of a family who may well be at risk. If these fears prove true, and I sincerely hope they're not, I would ask the Speaker to allow an emergency statement by the leader of the Council to confirm or clarify what may have happened. On behalf of one of my members, who has very commendably followed up these claims, I would also ask for an emergency meeting with the relevant director and cabinet member first thing tomorrow morning, so that we can ensure the family concerned is being looked after. I have to say that we're far from happy with the way this Council is handling the independent inquiry following our motion at the EGM earlier this year. We are likewise unhappy with regard to the number of issues surrounding the advisory committee, despite having forced through a number of changes. The title of this item, Tackling CSE Together, and yet we're still awaiting promised discussions with the current administration to truly make this issue cross-party and cross-council. I have to say that our confidence in this process is being stretched to the absolute limit.
Thank you, Andrew. Any comments?
Yeah, I'll comment if I could, please. I'll start with the allegation that's been repeated by the leader of the opposition. What I can say on this is that it was picked up this morning way before we'd had an inquiry from the member concerned. I can confirm that senior officers have been dealing with this most of today, and that we've investigated fully. We've investigated the circumstances of the matter. I would add that there was no official complaint made to the Council, but we've investigated this fully. We can assure everyone in this room that the correct procedures have been followed and that there has been no breach as alleged. In terms of the other item that he raises in respect to that, I'm sure that if he or the member involved has got information, that they should pass that on to the Director of Children's Services, who is in the room this evening, and can pass that information on as soon as possible, and we'll get on to that. What I would say in terms of his other points, it's not taken him long to start saying that he's got no confidence in the process of inquiry. In fact, this is not the first time he said this. He actually said it on the 24th of May in a meeting. I'm confident, and I'm confident that we're moving in the right direction, because I know that we've got the confidence of the survivors and victims who we've been engaging with on an informal and formal basis throughout this process. I'm confident because those survivors who are involved to a degree that they've not been involved in anything in Telford Wrekin for many years, including the years that he was in charge of the council. I'm also confident that they're involved to a level that's never been experienced across this country in the various investigations that have gone on across the country. You know, we promised that Telford would lead on tackling this issue. I'm confident that this inquiry and the way it's set up and its double independent status will deliver a first for the country, and it's encountered a good start. The other reason I'm confident is, again, to the survivors and victims, I believe that we now have a good enough relationship and constructive dialogue with them to overcome issues as we pioneer our way through this. Finally, I'd also say that I'm happy that and I'm absolutely confident that the survivors are happy that we're progressing in the right lines, along the right lines, and that we have that strong enough relationship with them. Although, what I would add is that we should not take that for granted, and we must keep engaging with them all the way through this. I've got nothing else to add to that other than to say that if I look back at where we were in the chronology of this inquiry, on the 18th of March you suggested that a group of councillors appoint a chair and set the terms of reference in your motion. By the 10th of April you changed that to say that the Cabinet should hold an independent inquiry and that council officers should establish an inquiry. But by the 19th of April we produce this double independent inquiry process that gets it out of the political long grass. Between the 19th and the 22nd of May you had no comments to make about the process. On the 22nd of May you made a suggestion around bringing forward the involvement of the survivors from stage 2 to stage 1. That was enacted on the 23rd of May, but by the 24th of May you were claiming that the inquiry process was stalled and that it was flawed. Mr. Speaker, I'm confident we're progressing along the right lines, but as I say, we can't take this for granted. We're on track, but we're working very hard. I would also add to all members that just because we don't post all of our progress on Twitter and Facebook, there is day-on-day activity and progress in respect of this very important matter.
Thank you, Lee. Can someone second? Thank you, Leader. Right, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. You got the count? Thank you. Those against? Abstentions? The motion is passed. You can take a breath now, gentlemen. Right. Cabinet on the 31st of May. I once again call on Councillor Lee Carter. Services and Financial Planning Report 2017-18 and the outturn for 2018-19.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move the report, including, I would bring members' notes to page 36 on where we've allocated the underspend that was achieved throughout the year. You might want to just, in light of what we've just experienced in this chamber, you might want to draw your attention to item 4, 350,000 for child sexual exploitation that I've just noted some members opposites failed to stick their hands up in favour of.
Yeah. They were supporting it but didn't want to vote on it.
I'll second that.
I didn't want to vote on it because there were certain things that were said there I believe to be inaccurate. There has been plenty from those that have been on the advisory committee from this side who have contended and argued against certain things that have been going on throughout this process. And there was no mention, well, what was mentioned there about the confidence that survivors had. Recently, one of our officers received a letter from the chairman of the survivors panel that did not actually reiterate what he just said.
Noted. We're going to vote on it. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay.
From me?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a question of clarity required from the Cabinet member. Section D2, page 27 for members, and it's the list at the top of the page. And before I do, the question I'm asking relates to parking. And we've got a question from a member later on referring to parking in Newport, and I've checked with the member concerned is Councillor Scott, and what I'm asking is complementary to what Councillor Scott is asking. This is important because this is an example of Scott and I working together. I know it's unusual. I promise it won't happen again. You'll forgive me.
You're sure it won't?
It may well do. And secondly,
no, it won't.
As Chair of Newport Town Council's Planning Committee, I'd like to thank all those residents who voted today in the referendum for the neighbourhood plan, and also like to thank the officers for spending what will be a very long day in hot conditions. Reference to bullet point 4, please can the Cabinet member confirm specifically that Newport will receive a fair and proportionate share of the £300,000 proposed for additional residential parking? And can the Cabinet member therefore clarify what that share will be? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the residential parking has been identified for residential areas, not for town centre or district centre areas. However, I can confirm that I've had detailed conversations with our mutual friend, Councillor Scott, who's making a very powerful case for additional investment in Newport and working in a very positive way to get it.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you. We have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Bill, why do you wait till the last possible moment? No. You didn't even indicate beforehand that you wanted to speak. But I'll allow you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's the hot, it's the heat. So, with regards to the final outturn and the projections for this year, I'm only going to partly repeat myself, Speaker, so forgive me for this. In looking at 2018 and 19, and for future years, we've still got to save, if the government cuts stay as they are, we've still got to save around £25 billion. And if you look on page 30, that's equivalent to the entire customer and neighbourhood services portfolio, which is eye-watering. I think we've all agreed that there were savings that we have been making over the years, 110 million so far, and I could be arguing we should have made those a few years ago, some of them, but we've also had to cut services, and we're really getting to the pinch now, Mr. Speaker. So I think it's immoral that we should even be talking about the fact we're having to consider this for future years to cut 25 million more off this budget, when we all agree that we should be investing more in adult social care and also more in children's social services, particularly with the issues that we talked about earlier. And I find that very disconcerting. The other group on the other side have decided that we shouldn't be looking at other fundraising methods and we should be looking to cut more and we shouldn't be risking borrowing things. But I'll give you a quick preview, because I know it's coming up soon, to an independent person who's actually made a comment about this, none other than our own auditor. And our own auditor, it's very unusual for auditors to make comments like this, because they normally just say, your accounts are okay, and off you go. But on our value for money and looking to try and bridge the gap that we've got coming up, he says the following things. He's saying, without such funding coming forward from the government, increasingly difficult decisions around savings plans will continue, including looking at the ways in which services are delivered, which is what we're doing. However, he then goes on to say, further consideration may need to be given to potential income-generating activities and associated risks. And I applaud what this Labour administration have done with that respect, in that they've gone out and we've borrowed and we've taken risks to invest in development properties and in housing, which are now delivering a return. We haven't done as some other local authorities, because these issues are fraught with risks. I recognise what the Conservatives are saying there. These are risks, but we're being pushed down that path. Even an authority not far away from here has invested very heavily in retail property, probably not even in its own area. And we know the risks that's being fraught now with retailers going left, right and centre. So there are risks. But it's the actual statement from an auditor saying, you've got to consider this. And he's been up and down and audits of the local authorities up and down the country, and they're all having to do the same. So I would hope that all sides of the House, when we come to discuss this properly, Mr. Speaker, when the budget comes up, will be willing to sign a motion to say enough is enough. We cannot and should not have any more of these cuts, and it should be reversed. All the intentions of the government that they put forward so far, on behalf of the people of Telford and Wrekin, We cannot cut any more out of adult social care. We shouldn't be cutting out. In fact, we will need to invest in both adult social care and children's services, and we need to reinvest in those areas which do help to reduce crime, which are all the youth activities which we can't always afford to do now. So I would hope all sides of the authority would say enough is enough, and ask our MPs to absolutely go to government and say it's gone beyond the pale. Like Theresa May, to be fair, has done with the health service, finally recognising the crisis that it's in. More funding's got to come in, well, it's got to come into here as well. Thank you.
All those in favour of the recommendation? Well, my goodness, it's unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Nathan England, would you like to move the annual scrutiny report? Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Speaker, I'd like to...
Steve. Oh, yes, you did. You'll never meet him, so don't try and swear on it. I can tell your voice anywhere, having had to listen to it for a good many years. Now, I won't tell you again, we don't need anyone silly enough to try and ad-lib over the top of something else. And if you want to do that, we will put you outside. Now, I'm sorry, Andrew, I can tell your voice. I've heard it often enough. So, Stephen, please don't try and be facetious. You are very poor at it. So just leave it at that. I remember sending a member of your party out of this meeting one time, and I really enjoyed it. And I could really look forward to doing it again. Yes. All right then, the whole of the front bench, we're all colluding here. Right? Now shut him up. Right, members. Sorry? Oh, can I move? Councillor Carter, would you formally move D3?
I'd be delighted to move the recommendations contained in the report.
Second that. Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Unanimous. The annual scrutiny report. The annual scrutiny report. Nathan?
Hi, good evening. Everyone's read the report, so I'll keep this brief. I'd like to take the opportunity to acknowledge and thank everyone who's participated in the scrutiny process this year, including members, residents, co-optees, and especially the Democratic Services officers for their continued support. Thank you.
Thank you. This is purely for noting members. Item 11, recommendation from boards and committee. The Audit Committee, Councillor Rob Sloan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two reports before you. F1, I'll move formally. You'll see there's a very slight amendment. We're recommending to you, we've reduced last year's word, and the slight change. I'll move F2 as well as I'm standing, Mr. Speaker. I will like to just say a few words about the short report, but an important report nevertheless. It's always been important that Council protects the council taxpayers' money, but perhaps never more so important than in the straitened times that we are all facing, all councils up and down the country. And I think the report shows some examples of what are some very small teams in the council doing some very important work protecting the public purse. But perhaps over and above that important protection of the public purse, if I can give you, just cast your eyes down to 8.4, it involved the theft of a considerable amount of money, but I would suggest it wasn't just the money, it was the vulnerable person that the council team was also protecting when it carried out that work. So with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I'll move F1 and F2, and I'd like to just formally put on my thanks to all the teams that stand behind this report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sloan.
Second, Mr.
Veronica?
Speaker.
Oh, we got a second. Veronica? Slow.
I think it's 4 years since I left DWP, but I'll have a go about what's happening. As I understand, there's a full rollout of universal credit in Telford in November, and at that point we'll lose all our housing benefit customers. But at the moment there is clearly a small rump of people increasingly decreasing as universal credit takes over some 6 benefits. But we carry on investigating, and of course some of these investigations are I'm looking for the cabinet member on the front row, but they'll be in the past as well, Richard, won't they? Some of the investigations, so it doesn't all come to a shuddering halt in November, but that's the situation. If the Councillor Veronica Fletcher wants any more, I'm sure we can provide a written answer which will circulate.
Thank you. So we need to vote on F1 and F2. F1 and F2 have been seconded. I'm going to take them individually. All those in favour of Appendix F1? It's unanimous. All those in favour of Appendix F2? Unanimous again. Now this.
Yes, that's F2.
That is just F2. Yeah. Right, members. Item 12 on the agenda, questions. You have 2 minutes per question and 2 minutes to answer each question. And the first question is from Councillor Peter Scott to Councillor Hilda Rhodes, Cabinet Member for Transport, Roads and Broadband.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many people now tell me that they cannot find a parking space in the Newport High Street area after 8:30 a.m. most days, and some are now choosing to go elsewhere to do their shopping. This is a big concern for local traders. Given that the number of car-owning residents and students using the Newport area car parks has risen sharply, have the council any plans to either increase their own parking spaces or supply any new ones?
Water Road.
Thank you, Councillor Scott, for that question. The Council is aware of the parking challenges in Newport and has been working with the Town Council to look at options for improving the situation. The Council undertake a public consultation last year on converting some car parks in Newport to short stay, which would have improved the availability of short stay. We are happy to review this again along with the option for free parking tickets, which has been successful and implemented in Wellington to improve parking capacity. Unfortunately, there is a limit available council land to construct new car parking spaces in Newport Town Council. Any consideration of additional car parks or converting car parks to multi-storey would need a significant capital investment supported by a robust business case. It is likely any capital investment into increasing parking would need to be recovered through charging, which does not align with the Council's policy of keeping our borough towns' car parks free to use to support our high streets. An officer, Councillor Scott, would be happy to meet with the Town Council to discuss plans once again to help you.
Supplementary, Councillor Scott.
Thank you. Well, I'm aware of the situation with the short stay, long stay. The supplementary question I would ask, because we have identified a space that may work for us in terms of more car parking spaces. Would the council be inclined to help us financially if the local council were to part fund?
I'm sure the council is happy to meet you and discuss that with you.
We'll set it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scott. Following question to Councillor Ray Evans, Cabinet Member for People Services, Visiting Economy and Partnerships.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right, as a current street champion myself, I note the good work done by these volunteers and encourage others to do the same. Newport benefits from a reasonable number of them. Street champions do not, though, seem to be very well advertised across the borough as a whole, and many residents say they've not even heard of them. So are there plans to advertise this role more widely using various channels?
Thank you, Councillor Scott, for asking this question and indeed for becoming a street champion yourself. Telford Wrekin Council Street Champion Scheme, which is a function of the Community Participation Team, has around 450 volunteers at the moment, is quite different from that which we originally introduced and which you may remember was simply a matter of getting a high-vis jacket, a black bag and a litter picker. In line with our values, the current programme now attracts volunteer groups and individuals by supporting their interests and their ideas. Innovative examples of this are the Lawley Running Club, who now collect rubbish whilst running, it's called plogging apparently, and the Telford Friends of Shropshire Way, who collect litter whilst rambling. In promoting the scheme, we utilise a wide range of channels. We actively use social media, including the Council's own website, our volunteer Telford website and Twitter account, to have 1,200 followers. Our weekly community participation newsletter goes to around 1,700 people and also promotes street champions. We work closely with town and parish councils, finding it helpful to get them to know their street champions so that these volunteers can link with the work of their pet teams. We have also recruited street champions from local businesses such as Reassure, Capgemini, Enter and Denso, whose staff took part in a very successful litter pick, collecting 70 bags of rubbish. Community events also promote the scheme, and we deliver junior street champion programmes in schools. Ultimately, however, the scheme is limited by the number of volunteers we can safely and effectively manage, and for this reason we have taken a managed and what we might term an organic growth approach to the programme's development. I welcome, of course, any ideas about how the scheme could be promoted further, and I've introduced them myself, and would encourage all councillors to consider how they too might get involved as street champions in their areas, perhaps utilising some of their own councillor pride fund.
Thank you. No subsequent question. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Bentley. Councillor Bentley. Yeah. Stand up, please.
Right, Mr. Speaker, this is a question for the leader. I welcome his announcement this week for the 600k investment into 20-mile-an-hour schools, around schools and such like. Could he tell me how and where this money will be spent?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Slightly different to the printed question, but I take the gist of the question anyway. I thank Councillor Bentley for his welcoming our investment. This investment comes from the managed budget of the last financial year, and as a result of the underspend that we generated as a result of our sound financial management of the budget. I'm pleased to say that the Council is making the additional £600,000 available, which will fund various initiatives around schools. 35 schools across the borough will benefit from this investment, and the schools have been shortlisted based on a range of factors, including the number of accidents and those that haven't benefited from the recent investment through Highways Capital Programme, Section 106 or other funding sources. And this work will be done on a phased approach over the next 2 academic years. The measures delivered outside of each school will vary depending on each of the school's individual circumstances. Meetings have already been held with senior teachers and business managers in 15 of the first 35 schools who will benefit from this funding. Measures will include, as he mentions, 20-mile-an-hour zones, flashing signing, improved road markings, installation of bollards and other measures aimed at highlighting the school's presence to motorists and helping to reduce speeds. What I would like to say, Mr. Speaker, is this is not the only thing we are doing. We are also working with schools in order to try and get them to work with us positively through our Travel Telford initiatives. That includes walking buses and encouraging parents to leave their car at home when taking their children to school. And of course, civil parking enforcement will come in at some point after the summer of 2019. But this is about trying to create the conditions for safer routes to schools and outside schools. And this initiative was first piloted with the Mayor, in fact, at Lawley Primary School.
Thank you. No supplementary? Oh.
Thank you. I just sat down. Sorry, I didn't know how to keep standing. The supplementary question is, as you know, I have a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit along the A442 at Crudgington. That has been, there's been many highlighted incidents of road rage through there, a number of accidents since it was introduced. Can you tell me how you're going to enforce these 20-mile-an-hour speed limits?
Mr. Speaker, as the member well knows, it's not for the council to enforce speed limits, it's for the police to enforce speed limits. And I've been corresponding with Councillor Bentley on a number of issues, and I hope he would agree that we've worked quite closely together positively to introduce the improvements outside the school in his local ward. But ultimately it is a matter for the police to take robust action, and I don't expect them to take robust action, including the Police and Crime Commissioner through funding various speed detecting devices that his officers and the community can use, and maybe he could use his good relationship with the Police and Crime Commissioner to secure investment for Telford Wrekin in this regard.
Thank you. Question 5. 4, sorry. Councillor Bentley to ask the following question of Councillor Sean Davies, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In September 2007, I tabled a motion, and which was seconded by Councillor Paul Wrekin. And this was unanimously agreed by this chamber. Can the Leader confirm if this council ever received a reply to the letter that was supposedly sent by the Speaker at the time?
Thank you, Councillor Bentley. And for those who are watching this benefit, just the motion that was referred to related to the Speaker of the Council writing a strongly worded letter on behalf of the full Council to the Government, Amber Rudd and the Lord Chancellor, at the time both Amber Rudd and David Lidington, calling upon them to utilise their statutory powers to review sentences imposed on particularly individuals convicted of crimes which relate to child trafficking, I can confirm that with regret no response has been received from the government on this issue, despite the fact that the former Speaker, Charles Smith, sent the letter.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Thank you for that response. To underline more what the leader was saying there, that motion was specific about one particular person who was identified following Operation Chalice as the leader of the child sexual exploitation gang here in Telford. The concerns that I wanted to raise, and there was a lot of issues around that motion, but having seen a recent report, that particular person is now being sent back to prison. Would the leader now write to the Home Secretary or whoever to ascertain the reasons why his licence was revoked?
Mr. Speaker, just before I answer that specific question, I did have to do some digging about what the government was saying at the time on this issue. The Minister for Justice at the time, who's now the Secretary of State for Exiting the European Union, Dominic Raab, said that unfortunately, despite the issues that were raised by this council and others, that the government would not intervene in the case. Would not intervene in the case, and refused to intervene in individual cases as a result. Now, I think, given that the motion was on a cross-party basis, that we should join together in condemning the government for not intervening in that particular case. I am more than happy, Mr. Speaker, to write to the Minister for Justice, whoever that person is this week, to raise the issue of the recall. However, what I would say to Councillor Bentley is that, unfortunately, as has been highlighted in many national examples, including the Justice Select Committee's report, that the probation service under this government is both under-resourced and understaffed and is failing. And the National Probation Officer concerned resigned recently as a result of inadequacies in that probation service. It is a disgrace that victims and survivors and also interested community people were not informed of the reasons for this person's recall, and it's a disgrace that we are not updated in regards to it. And I think we should join together, and he's got more influence over the government than I. We should join together in order that this government change policy, change course on this particular issue.
Thank you.
Speaker, was that an answer as a yes? Oh, that's all I wanted to know. Yeah, sorry, I missed that bit.
Question 5. Councillor Stephen Bentley will ask the following question of Councillor Hilda Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry I'm taking up so much time tonight. Having been reappointed to the Cabinet, do you intend any significant changes in the approach to either the collection or spending of Highway Section 106 contributions from developments?
Thank you, Councillor Bentley. No, I don't.
That's what I expected.
Yeah, well, if you're expecting it, you're not surprised, are you? No. Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Item 6. Councillor Stephen Bentley will ask the question of Councillor Paul Watling, Cabinet Member for Children and Adults, Early Help and Support.
Hell of a title, right, isn't it? I'm asking this question because Councillor Watling hasn't said anything but 2 or 3 meetings, so I think he was being left out, but nevertheless. Can you tell me what personal steps you have implemented in respect to behaviour standards within our schools?
Thank you, Councillor Bentley, for your question. My fellow Cabinet Member, Councillor Paul Watling, isn't actually available to speak for himself tonight, so I can't speak for him, but I'm happy to explain some of the wide-reaching support that has gone into schools to enable the schools to better meet the needs of the young people and therefore improve standards of behaviour. This includes a fair access panel that, in addition to its statutory function of providing school places for hard-to-place young people, also provides additional support and guidance and strategies to address behaviours. A team of inclusion mentors who work directly in schools alongside school staff to implement strategies to address behaviours for young people. The provision of a pupil referral unit, which is over and above the statutory placement of permanently excluded young people. This provides assessment and intervention places, and when a young person is reintegrated back into mainstream, there is support and advice available for the schools. The Linden Centre PRU has also provided outreach support directly to mainstream schools and to implement strategy behaviours. Also, additional capacity has been put into specialist provision that has been added for young people where their behaviour meets the threshold for an education, health and care plan for social, emotional and mental health needs. The Inclusion Schools Forum is a school-led forum where schools can ask for additional advice and potentially additional funding to better support these young people with the social, emotional and mental health needs, but are below the threshold for an ECHP. A conference was held in spring of 2018 for schools to share concerns and strategies to support behaviour and the inclusion of young people. As a result of that conference, a number of proposals have gone out to schools for consultation. The responses will form the basis of the new overarching behaviour inclusion strategy, which will come in the new academic year. A new behaviour support team leader has been appointed and will start in September 2018. His role will include working directly with schools to review policy and practice and to suggest next steps. But that's just a very brief outline of the many steps that we're working on with our schools regarding behaviour standards. Within your government's cut in funding, reduced funding, which is taking out the TAs from the classrooms, taking away specialist provision from our children, and this is across the country, not just Telford. You ask about behaviour.
Councillor Reynolds, would you wind up, please?
Certainly. Maybe your government can ask this question for you. They can answer the question for you.
Thank you. Item 7. Question 7, once again, Councillor Bentley. I'll ask the following question of Councillor Richard Overton, Cabinet Member for Housing and Enforcement.
Will the Cabinet Member give a commitment tonight that an urgent review of the local development plan will begin immediately following the August recess?
Thank you, Councillor Bentley. We don't have recesses at the council. We continue working all the way through August, and the answer's no.
Short and sharp.
There is a supplementary.
Yes.
I just wonder, before Councillor Overton actually endorsed the document that has recently been adopted, whether or not he actually read the policies from the Wrekin local plan, our old plan, and actually MPPF guidance in relation to the policies we now have. Because every time I go to Plans Board to either argue for a development or against a development, despite reading those policies time and time again and seeing the reasons why it should be yay or nay, there's a contradiction or a different implementation of the argument from the planning officers. I just want clarification, and I want black and white policies. So did he read them before he said, "Here, Mr. Examiner, have a look at this document for us"?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bentley. All I'd say is we have a newly adopted local plan. The inspectors endorsed it, and what you feel happens at Plans Board is because every Plans Board and every plan application is dealt with on its own merit.
Mr. Speaker, that wasn't an answer in relation to. I asked him if he'd read the documents and then compared them. That was the question, not what the examiner said. I know what the examiner said. We've got the documents.
But that's the answer you've been given.
But that wasn't the answer to the question.
Well, phrase it differently the next time, Stephen.
How can you phrase a thing, have you read?
You seem to have an opinion on everything else. Sit back. Instead of reading a book, read the question and then look at rephrasing it. Thank you. Now, this thing at the bottom we don't have to do with. Item 13, members. notice of motions. Councillor A.R.H. England will propose the following motion. Councillor
Thank you,
Arnold
Speaker.
England.
As we celebrate the 70th birthday of our beloved NHS, a proud national institution which delivers healthcare free at the point of delivery, this Council restates its absolute commitment in fighting for the retention of our consultant-led Women and Children's Centre at the Princess Royal Hospital through the Future Fit process, and have launched our NHS for All campaign to argue the case for why option 2 is the better option. It is completely illogical to move this centre, which was built only 4 years ago at a cost of £28 million and has been identified by SATH, which is Shrewsbury and Telford Hospitals, as a clinical need for our town. That need has not changed and will not change in the future, with 2/3 of admissions identified as being from Telford and East Shropshire. We are deeply concerned that the preferred option 1 is the most expensive and therefore could limit further investment in much needed community health services across the whole of Shropshire and Powys. Option 2 would provide significant savings year on year, which could support better GP access, more community services and even a new cancer centre for our town. Option 2 reduces journey times for more patients and saves revenue monies and capital borrowing. This Council will continue to question and challenge Future Fit proposals which are not future-proofed. These proposals do not address the need to reduce admissions to A&E, propose no extra funding for GPs, community care or adult social care, and will result in all communities losing out in respect of their current access to emergency and planned care. That's the motion. My comments are, as you are all aware, the people of Telford and Wrekin made the case for a hospital for the growing new town and wider locality. The arguments we put forward 40 years ago, which justified a hospital, have grown many-fold. That the government recognised the need for a women and children's unit for our area is notable. So what has changed? Has the need diminished? No. What has changed is that the RSH, that's the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital, requires £100 million worth of refurbishments. The only way they can fund that is to transfer resources and finance from Telford and Wrekin to the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital. Future Fit is not about the needs of Telford and Wrekin residents. It is about diverting resources from where they are needed most to an area that has been underfunded and mismanaged for years. The options are out for consultation. I urge all residents to reply to the consultation process. By ignoring it and just saying we need more funding is to allow those who have chosen option 1 the freedom to say there was no pressure for option 2. By making strong representation for option 2, we make a case for raising this at the highest level if the voices of our residents are ignored. I move. Thank you.
Are you going to...
And then reserve my right to speak.
Okay. Veronica.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In March 2011, after a rigorous review for the reconfiguration of services for SATH, unanimous agreement was reached by both PCTs, SATH, Board and Joint Health Scrutiny, Shropshire and Telford and Wrekin. I know I attended every meeting that day and chaired the Joint HOSC, which agreed to the transfer of the consultant-led services, revealed that the condition for the services at the RSH were not fit for purpose, and the PRH was the best place for them, especially as the demographic profile of T&W indicated this. Retention of both A&E was the other part of the reconfiguration. The right decision was made then, and is the right decision and holds sway today. As option 2 will retain these services, However, both options are based on financial decisions and requirements to make options viable. Today, it has been revealed that the financial position was based on the 2016 figures for overnight bed use, 765 beds, yet the consultation document bases the bed use as 785 beds. The resulting flaw in the finances means the greater costs for the 20 beds are not included in the financial cost as a whole. Further, the cancer centre costs of PRH were not included. This means that overall, option 1 is not viable, as it would mean an overspend of the costing, bearing in mind that 130 million of the 312 would be needed to repair and rebuild RHS. When was that costed? Option 2 would still be viable. Further, is the future fit? After 4 years of review, Future Fit has failed to address 1. The number of patients stranded or bed blocking in hospitals, at present 300 to 340 per day, at great cost to the patients, their health and their well-being. Community hospitals step-down facilities not considered in the document, and again it's a great cost to the South Board. 2. Not addressed prevention into the hospital. Prevention is better than cure. 3. Why is there not a third option? What has been delivered is anxiety, distress and uncertainty for the people and staff. Where is the due diligence? No vision for the future, a flawed process and consultation, not fit for purpose for the 21st century. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are a number to speak on this side, so I shall be brief. I support the great majority of Councillor Arnold England's motion. He is a beacon of integrity. It's a relief the motion itself does not detract with mention of cuts. The people of Shropshire and Wales are being consulted upon a binary choice, and there is a huge groundswell that this consultation is lip service, that there is a foregone conclusion to rebuild Shrewsbury Hospital at the expense of A&E and women and children in Telford. We are told quite explicitly this is not a referendum. I hope that the masters of Sath in their Shrewsbury stronghold have thought through the implications of all planned care for Shrewsbury and Wales being conducted miles away in Telford. Be careful what you wish for, Sath. What I would ask members here to consider is, amidst all the, I'm afraid, confusion of this administration's multiple campaigns, I think this is the third, below the radar, above the radar and in stealth mode, have we missed the boat for a judicial review to prove the process wrong and thus challenge the outcome? I fear we may have. The best opportunity was after the impact statement, when the process to arrive at the impacts was so clearly loaded to the west. The motion, specifically as worded, seeks to challenge the Future Fit process on clinical grounds. Members, few of us are doctors nor consultants. We're not experts, it is not our field. We can challenge on the grounds of democracy and fairness and transparency of process. I just hope this administration have not left it too little, too late. Support the motion, members. It is mainly talk. We now need action. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
Mr. Speaker, oh what a mess, oh what a mess, oh what a mess. Shropdock's gone because of funding cuts, gone onto the national scheme of 111, and we read in the newspapers that instead of 6% now going to A&E, there's 25% going to A&E. GPs, Jeremy Hunt came out and said we'd have 2 A&Es, didn't he? And, well, thankfully he's gone now, but we're still left in this mess. What happened? Jeremy Hunt said we were going to have 5,000 additional GPs by 2020. We've now got 1,000 less than we had a year ago. Nurses, they've taken away the bursaries. These hard-working people whose study is not like most degrees. They work 12 months every year, hardly get any leave at all. Take the bursaries away, what have we got? A shortfall there, a dramatic reduction in the amount of people coming forward to be nurses. What's that going to mean? We're not going to have enough people going in to do the various jobs. Look at this great mess we've got here from these clowns that call themselves Future Fit. It's fit for nothing, isn't it? Clinicians need, but they proved 2 or 3 years ago we needed the children's unit at Telford Wrekin at Princess Royal, and now they're saying we don't. It's got to go back to Shrewsbury. What a mess. It's not clinically needed, it's clinicians, senior clinicians that want this. This isn't putting the patients first, which is what they always say they're doing. I think they're putting themselves first, selfishly putting themselves first. This capital funding, we've argued the majority of it will probably end up at Shrewsbury. It says that we're going to have all elective care at Telford and Wrekin. What a load of codswallop. There's a brilliant oncology unit, which I know they want to replicate at Telford, but are they really going to replicate the oncology unit? I doubt it. And there are many other things where they're doing already elective care. This is simply a back door to close Princess Royal. We'll become a minor injuries unit, we'll do some periphery work, and I welcome the words that David Wright came out with this week. He says they haven't even made a decision yet whether what remains at the Princess Royal will remain within her health service or whether it will be privatised under some other body, which minor injury units up and down the country are being considered for. We're being cut. It just beggars belief with a huge growing population that require it on our doorstep. People cannot travel those distances and keep having to go to Shrewsbury for everything. It just will not work. I was in favour, and I'm still in favour, not option 2 or option 1, but the option which was to regenerate both hospitals. But if we've only got these options on there, we've got to vote on it, then my vote is for option 2. Thank you.
Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This process needs to be about creating 2 vibrant hospitals that are safe, forward-looking, able to attract the best consultants and deliver sustainable services, with decisions being accurately based on what healthcare professionals feel is best for patients. What is absolutely vital is that our communities have the facts at their disposal on the options currently being proposed within the Future Fit consultation. Our residents need to understand what services and healthcare provision would be provided under both proposals to enable them to identify any risks or impacts associated with each proposal, which ultimately will inform the consultation and be taken into account by Future Fit and the 2 CCGs. Therefore, whilst I and colleagues in the opposition group have maintained our position and why we feel Telford and Wrekin should hold the emergency care centre and thus support option 2, this council and all its members have a duty of care to our residents to ensure they have all the facts and information on what is being proposed under both options. Now is the time for our communities to share their views on what both options mean for them, and I hope sincerely that Future Fit and the 2 CCGs will listen to these concerns to ensure patients receive the best possible care. It is important that the decision is about patients and that focus remains on an evidence-based case, which should have been the main focus for this council, not campaigns which have failed to inform residents of what is being proposed, as understandably many are still utterly confused about what is being considered under both options. As a borough, Telford and Wrekin has the infrastructure in place, providing quicker transport links. We have a site with room for expansion, and we have one of the fastest growing populations in the UK. This, coupled with the very evidence that was used to secure the Women's and Children's Centre, provides a strong evidence-based case to secure the emergency centre in Telford and Wrekin. Overall, Mr. Speaker, while I've made no secret of my disappointment on the Council's approach, as have many residents, I'm pleased to see a more constructive and informed motion on a healthcare provision, which I wholeheartedly support. Whilst it is important the Council submit its own response for consultation, It is now for the public to have their say, and I encourage all our community residents to submit their views. As it is important this decision is made in the best interest of patients, using transparent, clear and an open process to ensure we provide the best healthcare provision for our county. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Nicola. Councillor Peter Scott.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Whoops, try that again. Thank you, Mr Speaker. I've supported option 2 from the start, largely on the position of Newport within the borough, as far away as it is on the edge in the east. And I think that moving anything backwards away from us is a folly. One of the problems I've had with it, though, is explaining to people why they should go on to the consultation in the first place. And I'm sad to say many people say, what's the point, it's already a done deal. I did ask a leading clinician only this morning, what do you need to have from us for you to consider option 2 properly? And his words to me were, we would need compelling evidence for us to consider option 2. So I think what we as residents of Telford and Wrekin, Newport, wherever you live on this side, and our MPs who are surprisingly quiet on this, and that concerns me greatly, particularly the MP for the Wrekin, very quiet on it. I think everyone should go on to this consultation. It's all we've got. It's either option 1, which we know will move services away, or option 2 that will keep them in Telford. The cry must go out from all of us here and all of us who may be listening to get on this consultation, say you wish option 2, because without that evidence we're going to get option 1 and we will regret it for the rest of our lives.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Sean Davies.
Mr Speaker, just very briefly, and just to pick up Councillor Nelson's point with regard to the judicial review, we have not at all vetted our decision in regards to the judicial review. But what I would say is, look through the minutes of the council meeting, where one meeting you support a judicial review, the next meeting you're attacking us for threatening a judicial review, the next meeting you're saying we should never even consider a judicial review, and today you're saying we've actually wasted our opportunity for a judicial review. Consistency is really important on this issue, as is consistency about your message to residents, because you've had more positions on this than a Formula 1 driver in a racetrack, with the greatest respect to them. Option 3, option 1 plus, option 2 plus is utter ridiculous. And what I would say is, let's not forget, actually, this situation in Telford and Wrekin, Shropshire and Mid Wales, as well as the rest of the country, is a result of grossly underfunding the National Health Service since 2010. In real terms, year in, year out, your Conservative MPs have starved the National Health Service of funding. Your Conservative MPs have cut training places in 2010 for junior doctors who would now be consultants if they had trained in 2010. Your Conservative MPs have scrapped nursery bursaries and replaced it with a loan, and that has seen a reduction in nurses taking up the places of training. Your Conservative MPs have put off and blocked Commonwealth doctors from coming to this country to work in our National Health Service, and as a result of that there has been doctor shortages. So let's not allow some people in this chamber to wash their hands of their own party's responsibility as to why our NHS is in such a mess because of their gross underfunding of it. And where is the Conservative MPs in Shropshire highlighting the fact that under option 2 they will privatise the urgent care centre at Telford? Where are they? Not having an A&E, not even having a public sector urgent care centre. The chances are, Mr Speaker, a private sector company operating an urgent care centre in Telford for patients' care, utter rubbish, for profit. And that's the difference between this Labour Party. The next Labour government would have 2 A&Es in Shropshire. Just like in 2010, the then Health Secretary, or just before 2010, the then Health Secretary, Andy Burnham, blocked plans to close one A&E. And what I say, Mr. Speaker, and what residents want is 2 A&Es, and they need a Labour government who's going to fund and invest and protect the NHS that we as a party created.
Councillor Jackie Seymour.
Well, here we are again for the 7th time, debating an issue the basis of which, i.e. the retention of the consultant-led Women and Children's Unit, either in or near Telford, where the clinical and demographic need has been undeniably proven, is not in any way a matter of dispute between us. Neither, I think, is the fact that option 1 is not only the most expensive, and has been stated, and long-winded, and has been stated, is being used as an opportunity to catch up and pay for a long-delayed backlog and maintenance work at the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital. This should not, of course, be part of the equation when considering the right site for the emergency unit. We agree on these points, so why we keep debating them and to what end, I'm not quite sure. However, I am pleased to note that I thought you had given up on the idea of trying to retain 2 fully operating A&Es, although the leader just seems to have scotched that one, and have accepted you should have accepted the difficulties and practicalities of attracting and retaining sufficient fully qualified emergency consultants to properly man 2 separate sites, which then, as separate entities, cannot provide them with enough variety of experiences to enhance their qualifications, and therefore they won't come. And this is a point I think I have made before on a number of occasions. Unfortunately, however, it seems to be a point that even now your party leader, Jeremy Corbyn, does not seem to have taken on board. He would have been advised to have contacted, well, perhaps he should have contacted our side to establish the facts of the matter before going into print. However, what this council should now address is the other reason, apart from the backlog and maintenance work, that the RSH is being promoted as option 1. It is because it is a trauma unit. Why is it a trauma unit? It is simply because they applied to be one. The Princess Royal could equally apply to be a trauma unit, and if it did, then not only would this enable the Women and Children's Unit to stay where it is, but the whole option 2 would without doubt become the cheapest, quickest and most obviously viable option. So instead of trying to argue that Future Fit does not address extra funding for GPs, community care and adult social care, which, as you well know, are the subjects of entirely different funding streams, this council should have been arguing for what is practical and possible. That is, for the Princess Royal Hospital to become the trauma unit for South and thus become the favoured site for the emergency unit.
Councillor Andrew Eade.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Well, that was quite rich from Councillor Davis at a time of huge and record investment into the NHS, both nationally and locally, of course. As for the motion, I've got a good deal of respect for Councillor Arnold England, who proposed this motion, although it's a shame that no dialogue whatsoever has been opened by the Labour group as a whole in order to fight Future Fit issues on a cross-party basis from the very beginning, the start of this process. If we had done that, as has always been common practice in the past, perhaps we could achieve something meaningful and constructive. Perhaps between us we could have forced through a more equitable outcome as we have done so in the past. And rightly or wrongly, I believe that Arnold England, had he been leader of this authority, would have done exactly just that. Instead, all we have so far seen from the Council's leadership are failed promises to protect the PRH and bellicose threats which have only succeeded in wrecking working relationships and have delivered absolutely nothing for the people of this borough. This, coupled with 3 different campaigns my colleague Councillor Nelson was right. The first one was softly, softly. Let's not upset anybody. It's going to come our way. The PRH for me, and finally NHS for all. Those have got us absolutely nowhere. Snappy titles do not a campaign make. What was needed was a clear vision for the borough, and that has been sadly lacking. And to demonstrate the utter confusion of those leading this third campaign, the council's leader has now changed his mind at the 11th hour and ditched his demands for full A&E on both hospital sites. This site is now completely at odds with the Labour Party in Shropshire and beyond, and not to mention his own leader, Jeremy Corbyn. What he's now proposing is what my group proposed to full council some 18 months ago. Why on earth didn't we fight to achieve that end together at that time, instead of wobbling from issue to issue without any consistency or clarity of thought? Following my discussion with Arnold, I had looked forward to a joint motion on which we could fight and go forward together. Having said that, Arnold, you promised to come back to me for a discussion on the joint motion, but you didn't. I can only assume that you were prevented from doing so by other elected members on the authority. Well, as leader of the council, Councillor Davis, you didn't even get off your backside to go and look at the Northumbria model, something which was with the right guile, could have achieved exactly what we wanted. And let me be clear, after discussions we had with senior staff at Cramlington, plus the great work done by the former CEO of the Princess Royal Hospital, David Sambach, with the designer of their emergency care centre, I do not accept at face value the costings arrived at by Future Fit on a Northumbria type model here in Shropshire. If you want to spend cash constructively, challenge their findings and costs on that issue. If I was leader now, that's exactly what I would pursue, and I would challenge them to the bitter end. However, and unfortunately to do that, you need to fully understand what our proposals were. And you just clearly didn't. You didn't understand them. You didn't take the time to look at all. You did not listen to David Sambach, and you dismissed his proposals as well.
Wind up, will you please, Andrew?
Yes, I will, Speaker. However, you turned your nose up at our thoughts and the thoughts and experience that David put forward in order to pursue an option which you now no longer support. What a mess. You will go down as the council leader that lost the PRH for the people of Telford and Wrekin. I'd like to move a recorded vote on this issue.
Yeah, sufficient has been stood. Richard, do you wish to speak now?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I first welcome the 70th birthday of the Labour NHS, a world-renowned system that delivers free healthcare for its citizens. It is no surprise that after 8 years of a Conservative government, the NHS finds itself being squeezed and reduced once again. The staff that work in our NHS do a magnificent job, but Future Fit will not be supporting or helping these dedicated workers who are already feeling the pressure with the current model, even before any of the proposed changes. The red line from this council has always been our consultant-led Women's and Children's Unit. Why? Because clinically the need is for Telford, Wrekin and East Shropshire. This hasn't changed and will not change in the future. It's a pity Adam Cairns was still not Chief Executive, someone who identified clinical need and decided to do something about it, unlike the current incumbent who still follows the county town set who want everything in Shrewsbury. Our PRH for Me campaign was one of the biggest petitions this authority has run, and now the NHS for All is engaging with residents on the options currently are out for consultation for Future Fit and their preferred option of taking away our consultant-led Women's and Children's Unit and downgrading our A&E to an urgent care centre. We continue to fight for the retention of these services, as this administration's eyes were not swayed by options not on the table. We always kept our eyes on the ball, and we will continue to do all we can to protect the services that our hospital provides. The public won't be fooled by crocodile tears of the Tory opposition, trying to put up smoke and mirrors and then jump behind motions of support for their hospital. Let me reminisce. A Tory health secretary came to this town to say that the 2 A&Es were safe. His lovely picture with Lucy Allen and the Shropshire Star. This is now not the case. Why did he say it? To win an election. That's what Tories always do. And what now? A Tory government funding a loan to downgrade one of our A&Es. What did the Tory MP say? We should be grateful for this investment. Yes, indeed, we should be grateful for longer journey times, for the downgrade of services, for having no A&E and for the removal of our consultant-led women's and children's unit. Oh yes, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the NHS because without it I wouldn't even be here. But I'm not grateful for the millions of pounds to downgrade a hospital in this county. So I'm not going to say thank you. I'm going to say Lucy Allen, Mark Pritchard, stand up for this town. Fight for your residents. Fight to retain our hospital services. That's what we are doing. There's no white flag above this administration's door. I second.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor England, do you want to sum up?
Just a few words, Leader, if I may. I've been praised by Conservatives. Certainly is.
He certainly won't sleep tonight.
From both the current leader and the leader in waiting. I welcome the comment regarding Jeremy Corbyn's support for our hospital services in Telford. At least one MP supports us. I'm very pleased to see that. This motion, yeah, the 7th or whatever, but it's now that we have the consultation. This motion is to reaffirm our commitment and to raise the need for people to take part in the consultation process. Therefore, we're airing it again. Veronica, I agree totally with your comments. Option 1 means less beds and cuts, and I think that is very well understood. Cuts will result from option 1. Option 2 will entail less in repayments and potentially allow investment in services. You can't guarantee that that will happen, but at least it's the potential and it's the opportunity. And I totally agree with the comments about clinicians deciding and determining services to suit clinicians. This is clinician-led, not community-led. It should always have been community-led. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor England. Yes, our members, a recorded vote has been called for and passed, so we will go for the recorded vote now.
Councillor Ashford. Councillor Bentley. Councillor Blundell. Councillor Boylan. Councillor Burford.
You'd make a hedgehog weep.
Councillor Burrell. Councillor Eric Carter. Councillor Lee Carter. Councillor Liz Clare. Is she gone? Councillor Cook. Councillor Davis. Councillor Reid. Councillor Arnold England. Councillor Nathan England. Councillor Evans. Councillor Ian Fletcher. Councillor Veronica Fletcher. Councillor Francis. Councillor Furnival. Councillor Greenaway. Councillor Jones. Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Loveridge. Councillor Lowery. Councillor Mason. Councillor McClements. Councillor Mehta. Councillor Meredith. Councillor Minor. Councillor Murray. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Overton. Councillor Pinter. Councillor Gilly Reynolds. Councillor Shirley Reynolds. Councillor Steve Reynolds. Councillor Rhodes. Councillor Sahota. Councillor Scott. Councillor Seymour. Councillor Sloan, you declared an interest. Councillor Smith. Joel Smith. Councillor Malcolm Smith. Councillor Tillotson. Councillor Karen Tomlinson. Councillor Bill Tomlinson. Councillor Turley. Councillor Wright.
The motion is passed unanimously. Then we've got Andrews. Councillor Reid.
Yes, thank you for that timely reminder, Speaker. I was very keen to present this motion. I'm not going to talk to it particularly, it's pretty self-explanatory. I noticed that we have the usual number of amendments in there. Some of these are pretty rich, to be quite honest. Certainly the one that says no effective voice to support services at our local hospital. You've got to be having a laugh, haven't you, the way this council has conducted itself. However, I believe that there are issues around democracy, accountability and community that would preclude any formal merger between the two councils, and I think once again it's time for us to make that very clear that that is the position of the Conservative group, and I hope it is the position of the whole council as well. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Have we seconded it? Thank you, Ian. Angela?
I'd like to move an amendment, Mr. Speaker. Is this the appropriate time to do it?
Yeah.
I presume it's for the sake of people watching. I will read out the motion. This council reaffirms its continued support of the unanimously accepted motion proposed by Councillor Andrew Reid and seconded by Councillor Nigel Dugmore on behalf of the entire Conservative group, brought before full council on the 1st of May 2014 to oppose any proposals for the merger of Telford and Wrekin and Shropshire councils. The council note that this motion was amended by the Labour administration to include senior roles and functions of the authority after it was subsequently unanimously agreed by full council. This council also notes for information purposes that this followed the motion by the Labour administration on the same subject dated the 11th of July 2013 opposing any merger with Shropshire Council, in which a recorded vote highlighted that the Conservative group voted against. This council recognises the incredible positive difference that councils in Telford and Wrekin have made to the area over the last 50 years, particularly Telford and Wrekin Council since its formation as a unitary council 20 years ago. This council agrees that any such merger or shared services or key roles would result in an increase in the likelihood of no clear democratic voice for the people of Telford and Wrekin to promote and champion our borough, no effective voice to support services at our local hospital, a detrimental impact on inward investment and regeneration of our borough, money being generated in Telford but spent in other parts of Shropshire, a major dilution of senior management capacity and focus on local services, the council HQ being located in Shrewsbury, distant and remote from issues here, an increase in council tax, privatisation or closure of our leisure centres, library closures, car parking charges introduced in our local high streets, and these would be detrimental to the communities of Telford and Wrekin. I'd like to speak on the amendment.
By all means.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's really important to detail the history of this motion, and the amendment, I think, reflects that. It's also important to clearly lay out to our residents of Telford and Wrekin precisely what a merger with the Conservative-controlled Shropshire Council would mean. And that's why it's important to amend the motion, which I feel is there just to tick a box in the lead up to the local elections next year. So let's go back in history of this motion, just in case anyone has forgotten. You will recall, members, that a motion by the Labour administration was put forward against a merger with Shropshire Council dated the 11th of July 2013. You will further recall, for those that weren't councillors during that time, there was a recorded vote on that motion, and the Conservative group opposite voted against. Voted against. However, a few meetings later, when challenged, the leader of the Conservative group said that his group hadn't voted against. Well, I was a little bit gobsmacked, to be quite honest. And for those councillors who were around at the time, perhaps will recollect that I got up out of my chair or off my backside, crossed the floor and handed Councillor Eade the actual minutes of the meeting, which clearly stated that the entire Conservative group had indeed voted against. I have to say the words trust or lack of come to mind at this point. And I must admit, Councillor Eade did look a little panic-stricken that night. I suppose he would have, because he got caught out. He hadn't told the truth. Well, members, you can guess what happened next. A few months later, in May 2014, the Conservative group brought a motion opposing any proposals of merger of both councils. Well, I suppose it was only 12 months to the 2015 election. And just for clarification, for those members who may have forgotten, that motion was amended by the Labour group to include senior roles and functions of the authority. It is important to remind members that this was indeed a Labour amendment that was passed unanimously on the 1st of May 2014. So, Mr. Speaker, here we are again, less than 12 months away from an election, with this Conservative group running scared and putting another motion on this issue, without any substance, without defining why it would be detrimental to our communities of Telford and Wrekin. The Labour administration's red lines are clearly detailed in this amendment, but these are a starter for 10. There are, of course, more. Just picking out the ones that we know our residents would be concerned about in these difficult times. No effective voice to support services at our local hospital. So do you think the Shropshire Council would fight for our local PRH? I don't think so. An increase in council tax. Shropshire council tax is higher than ours, so it's likely to go up. Car parking charges in our local high streets, an absolute no-go area for this Labour administration. Library closures, privatisation of our leisure centres, that's what a merged council would mean. Telford's loss would be Shropshire's gain. Mr. Speaker, everything we see tells us that local Tories don't stand up for Telford. We've heard it tonight. We've only got to look at how our lacklustre 2 MPs are on fighting for our local hospital. And there's not been one question or challenge by them to their own government of any £1 of 117 million cuts to services here in Telford and Wrekin. No standing up for Telford. Do we honestly believe that the Tories in Telford and Wrekin will oppose any proposals for merger? Do we really think that they will fight for the residents of Telford and Wrekin? Well, I have to say we only have to look at their past history on this issue. When they denied in this chamber, they'd even voted against. The big question for me is, do we honestly trust them? I know the answer to that. I move the amendment, and I'd like to call for a recorded vote.
Thank you. Yes. Have we a second for the recorded vote? Jilly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I second this amendment simply to reaffirm this administration's unwavering commitment to the people of Telford and Wrekin. Shropshire's Tories have plotted for too long to merge our councils and deprive local people the ability to make decisions for themselves. The bond between councillors here tonight and the public is defined by the trust they put in us every 4 years. Trust, Mr. Speaker. Our word is all we have until policies become realities for families in our borough. And when this council says something, it must act decisively. So to my surprise, here we are again, talking about the favourite topic of the Shropshire Tories opposite, their steadfast commitment to recommit to the commitment of no plans to merge Shropshire Council with our own after not originally supporting this commitment in 2013. If you're confused, then hold on to your seats, because I feel like we've been here before. Let's have a look at Tory councillors' plans for our borough. Let's evaluate their credibility and then ask, can we trust them? Let's look at the shopping list of Tory U-turns, policies they surprisingly support today, having frantically opposed them. New Place, they voted against. Telford's 50 celebrations, they voted against. Pride in your High Street, guess they voted against. Pride in your community, they voted against. Our local solar farm generating thousands of pounds for our community, they voted against. Telford's land deal and growth funding, they voted against. And ruling out any merger of Shropshire Council, you guessed it, they voted against. So what does that mean in reality? Well, in total that's £236 million of investment for Telford and Wrekin. £4 million of extra revenue for frontline services, investment in our local high streets, record investment in our roads, tens of thousands of visitors to Telford this year alone, over 1,000 new jobs created and over 1,000 new homes built. This is what you have voted against. No wonder you're changing your tune. No wonder Shropshire's Tories are eager to jump into bed with the members opposite. While Shropshire's Tory-led council is closing down community centres and libraries, we haven't closed any. Whilst we're building affordable homes on brownfield sites, they're selling off the green belt to developers. Whilst we're welcoming international businesses, they're struggling to retain them. And whilst we're keeping our council tax at the lowest levels in the West Midlands, they've raised theirs by 6%. That's not the future I want at Telford and Wrekin, and I don't think it's what local people want either. So I come back to trust and credibility. All I see here is a smokescreen. Pull back the curtain and all we have is the same old opposition. Opportunists, not opportunity makers. Selling off the crown jewels and letting Shropshire make the big decisions. We've all heard the plotting and ambitions of senior Tory MPs in this borough. It reflects the true ambitions of members present. This is a smokescreen and the public won't be fooled. This amendment is about putting your cards on the table. The public deserve to know. It's an unwavering commitment against any plans to merge in any way with Shropshire Council. Mr Speaker, it's an honour every day to champion and serve our beautiful borough, and will continue to do so, even if the Shropshire Tories opposite have given up.
Does any other member wish to speak on the... Oh. Are you speaking on the amendment? Bill?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'd like to briefly talk about the amendment. I fully support the amendment because it absolutely makes it abundantly clear. In all the arguments that have been going on with Future Fit, the Tory MPs in Shropshire have been fighting hard and been very abusive about Telford and Wrekin, you know. How dare they say these things? How dare they come up with this? We should just get rid of them and absorb them under Shropshire. That's the true Tories in this area. But at least their MPs have stuck up for the hospital that's in their area. At least their MPs are saying things. You might not agree with it, but at least they've stuck up with it. Where are our MPs? It's no wonder we've got to make a difference here on this council because our own MPs aren't even supporting us. Thank you.
It's finished. Nicola, Nicola?
Yeah. I hadn't intended to speak on this motion tonight, Mr Speaker, but I have to say I'm absolutely appalled by what I've heard this evening. By the comments that have been made by several members of the administration. This motion was simply put forward in a spirit of cooperation and to ensure a clear democratic voice for our residents in Telford and Wrekin. And it's an absolute disgrace, Mr Speaker, to hear the comments from Councillor McClements this evening that opposition members do not represent or stand up for the views of their constituents. This motion was put forward for a clear and simple reason, and it is a disgrace, as I say, that this amendment has come forward, that you've debated, as I say, the legitimacy, and that we will not stand up for our residents. So I'd just like that mentioned as part of this meeting, Mr Speaker.
Okay, thank you, Nicola. Yeah, Councillor Steve Bentley and then Councillor Zahota.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, in the sense of both motions I can support, but I do object to being ridiculed by people as to my perceptions and such like. Because I would expect people who know me know I don't cow down to anybody. Never have done, never will do. It is in my nature. And when they decide they want to bully, I'll just bully back. So if people in Shropshire want to bully this authority, I'll champion it for you. I don't care. Because I'm better at it than most of the people who are sitting over there, and they know it.
You're a better bully.
Yeah, I certainly am. Very much so, Mr Speaker. And I don't take opportunities to try and ridicule people in public either, as has recently happened.
Carry on.
I don't need to carry on.
No.
I would like an apology about me from these people over there.
Hey? Councillor Zahota.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I just wanted to speak on the amendment, really. I remember it well in 2013. I was a leader, and there was a motion, and then it was vehemently opposed by the Conservative group. However, I do now welcome their U-turn, the Tories, on the merger of the Shropshire and this council. They opposed this policy for the sake of opposing it in 2013, and now they've seen the errors of their way and they have come to their senses. Why? Because they know what a mess the Tory council run next door is, and they don't want to be associated with that. And only last week there was a large demonstration by local business communities in Shrewsbury and Ludlow on the issue of parking charges, and we all know what a parking charge is controversial. Tories are just clearing the deck. I think that side is just clearing the deck for next year's election so they can put these things onto their election manifesto. And Mr Speaker, if they're going to do that, why don't we have a motion from the Conservatives across the road on the other policies of this administration which they had originally opposed. Perhaps they can have a motion on what a good thing the new place, the policy is, building homes on a council-owned land for the local residents, and which brings in some income as well. I don't know where they stand on that one, but they were not too happy when we brought that in. And this was something that brings in hundreds of thousands of income for the council. How about a motion? Perhaps they can appraise how we handle and manage the government cuts of £120 million or so for the last 7 years, and then they can put that on their election leaflet as well, that they supported us. And voters of Telford Wrekin are always watching and listening to us all in here. They know what we are up to. They know what the Tories are up to for the last 7 years, and they will not be taken. They'll know that if they do a U-turns on these, that they can put it on there. Perhaps they can have all these policies and do a U-turn and stick it on their leaflets when we come to do the election next May. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Sultan. On the amendment. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move to the vote, and we're going to have a recorded vote on the amendment. I don't think you should do. Yes, we'll allow you. Not you, Councillor. Yes. Yes. Nobody's differing with you, Ian. Right. Debbie.
Councillor Ashford. Councillor Bentley. Councillor Blundell. Councillor Boylan. Councillor Burford. Councillor Burrell. Councillor Eric Carter. Councillor Lee Carter. Councillor Cook. Councillor Davis. Councillor Eade. Councillor Arnold England. Councillor Nathan England. Councillor Evans. Councillor Ian Fletcher. Councillor Veronica Fletcher. Councillor Francis. Councillor Furnival. Councillor Greenaway. Councillor Jones. Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Loveridge. Councillor Lowery. Councillor Mason. Councillor McClements. Councillor Mehta. Councillor Meredith. Councillor Minor. Councillor Murray. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Overton. Councillor Pinter. Councillor Gilly Reynolds. Councillor Shirley Reynolds. Councillor Steve Reynolds. Councillor Rhodes. Councillor Hota. Councillor Scott. Councillor Seymour. Councillor Sloan. Councillor Charles Smith. Councillor Malcolm Smith.
4.
Councillor Tillotson. Councillor Karen Tomlinson. Councillor Bill Tomlinson. Councillor Turley. Councillor Wright.
The vote was unanimous, members, and now becomes the substantive motion. Anyone want to speak on it? Andrew? Make your mind up, you two. It's like pulling strings. Ian? Yes. Make sure you square it with your leader. Even when you don't agree.
Mr. Speaker, members, I listened very carefully to the comments before and the proposal, the amendment saying about electioneering. 2014 was a year before the 2015 elections, and there was a bigger Labour amendment to the motion. This year is 1 year before the 2019 elections, and there's another Labour amendment. Surprise, surprise. So I'm wondering who really is electioneering. I notice actually the amendment is very detailed. Is that to allow the Labour members to realise what they're actually voting for, remember what they're voting for? They go on about how wonderful and everything that they've done, and they mention New Pace. It made a profit, that's quite right. Didn't declare a dividend. The only money that New Place gives to the council is what it pays for the services. I gave you the honour of not interrupting your comments. I'd be surprised if you gave me the same consideration. The only thing I would say about Labour administrations and all its wonderful things it does it's increased the debt by a hell of a lot, which everybody will be paying forever. This reaffirms the council's position that we do not want to be a part of Shropshire. The amendment mentions about the council's positive difference that councils in Telford and Wrekin have made over the last 50 years. Well, this Wrekin council is only, Telford and Wrekin council has only been in place for 20 years. Previously, 30 years, it was a Labour administration. And I think it was a Labour county council as well for that time as well. So it's just a case of the, I think this amendment is electioneering. It doesn't try to enhance it. It's just a case for the Labour Party likes to attack us, but we normally expect that because they're such idiots. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Do you want an handkerchief? Do you want an handkerchief? I thought you were going to get them all in tears.
Speaker, can I move that the motion be put, accepting the mover of the motion has got a right of reply?
It's moved and seconded that the motion be put. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I hadn't honestly realised there was an election coming. I thank members for, well, I can assure you nobody's running scared over this side. And if there is an election coming, as you assure me there is in May, that must be right, of course, I look forward to it. I really do look forward to the elections this time round. Well, I've heard quite a lot of things about merger, including car parking charges. Well, let's be quite clear about whose record did what on car parking charges and try to wreck the viability of this borough. So I suggest you don't go there. As for Councillor McClements, I found the comments divisive and objectionable, to be quite honest. There's no need for that, that sort of language. Now, let me explain something to you. We put the original motion forward and we voted against the amendment, not the original motion. And why would we vote against our own amendment? Think about it. Now, the reason we voted against the amendment at that time, because it actually precluded back office working, which you then proceeded to do anyway. So, you know, pot and black springs to mind. We would not put forward a motion and then vote against it willfully. We're, as has already been said, we're not idiots.
Would you...
Now,
just a moment, Andrew. Just a moment, Labour members. Now, I like a good argument, the same as anybody else. But when a person is on his feet in this chamber, we give them the respect that is due to them. You might disagree with them, but you have the chance to stand on afterwards and disagree with them. But while they're on their feet, please treat it with the respect that it may or may not deny. Andrew.
Thank you, Speaker. Well, the reason we brought forward this motion at this time has nothing whatsoever to do with an election, I can assure you. What it is to do with is the back office working that's going on that's been encouraged by this administration, and we have our concerns that you would want to merge with Shropshire. So I actually welcome your amendment. Thank you. Thank you very much for spelling it out for us, and we were only too pleased to support it. Thank you for your help.
Thank you, Andrew. Right, members, it is now the vote for the substantive motion, which was the original amendment. Right, it's done. We now have a recorded vote on it, members. Debbie.
Councillor Ashford. Councillor Bentley. Councillor Blundell. Councillor Boylan. Councillor Burford. Councillor Burrell. Councillor Eric Carter. Councillor Lee Carter. Councillor Cook. Councillor Davis. Councillor Reid. Councillor Arnold England. Councillor Nathan England. Councillor Evans. Councillor Ian Fletcher. Councillor Veronica Fletcher. Councillor Francis. Councillor Furnival. Councillor Greenaway. Councillor Jones. Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Loveridge. Councillor Lowry. Councillor McClements. Councillor Mehta. Councillor Meredith. Councillor Minor. Councillor Murray. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Overton. Councillor Pinter. Councillor Gilly Reynolds. Councillor Shirley Reynolds. Councillor Steve Reynolds. Councillor Rhodes. Councillor Sahota. Councillor Scott. Councillor Seymour. Councillor Sloan. Councillor Charles Smith. Councillor Malcolm Smith.
4.
Councillor Tillotson. Councillor Karen Tomlinson. Councillor Bill Tomlinson. Councillor Turley. Councillor Wright.
Members, the motion is passed. Thank you. That completes your agenda for tonight. Can I thank you for your decorum and contribution and declare the meeting closed.